Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we now dive into the interesting story out of Atlanta and just the fact that their offense mightily struggled in their season opening game against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that a lot of people sort of grew cold on throughout the course of the offseason. I've been a little bit of a pessimist with the Steelers myself personally, and this was not what the Falcons wanted to see from their debut after giving Kirk Cousins this massive contract in the offseason, where they bring him in and we're expecting him to sort of take this offense to the next level. They have all of these different weapons that they feel like they can unlock. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, the 3 first-rounders they drafted in consecutive years, and have been waiting for any of them to really break out. That wasn't so much the case during this game for the Falcons, and that was for a couple reasons. Now, we'll start with Kirk Cousins here because that is the main story. 16 of 26, 155 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. And I will have some leeway with Kirk Cousins, where I have never really been a Cousins believer. I thought that this was a risky move for the Falcons to sign him to that big of a contract during the offseason. But that being said, coming off of a year when your quarterbacks are Taylor Heinicke and Desmond Ridder, anything's an upgrade, and I can understand getting desperate maybe a little bit. But This was not a good game, and Kirk Cousins, to his defense, was under pressure for a lot of that game. That Steelers defense, even if you're not a believer in a lot of their offensive foundation, that is a defense that can play. TJ Watt was an absolute monster in this game for them, causing havoc. And on that note as well, forced an extra fumble against Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins fumbled 2 times, both of which were overturned by penalties that were called as well. So things could have even been worse for Kirk Cousins in this debut. But he was under duress for a lot of the game, so I will give him at least that statement of, I understand that was not an easy situation to walk into. The decision making, though, coming off of that as well, was a bit concerning because on both of the plays, they were almost a little bit similar in the fact that on the first play, he was under pressure and he throws into the middle of the field with double coverage. And, being hit as he throws a little bit, Larry Ogunjobi was in his face. That's just a throw that you're not going to have that same juice on it. Kirk Cousins, he even had a few seconds. He had a good few 3 seconds in the pocket where you have to be able to recognize the defense in front of you and not make the big mistake, which is turning the ball over. That's what he did there. The second interception, pocket collapsing around him, looked like he was hit as he throws a little bit, but again, a situation where you have to know that you're not going to have the arm strength to make a throw to outside of the numbers, over multiple defenders, and just sort of drop it in the pocket there. And he ends up throwing that interception as well, which sort of came back to really seal the game for the Steelers to win this game. By the way, on that play as well, possibly worth noting that for you Steelers fans out there, it was Dante Jackson with that second interception to seal the game, and Dante Jackson was the cornerback that the Steelers acquired in the Deontay Johnson trade with the Panthers during the offseason. So looks like that may already be paying dividends for the Steelers as they continue to ramp up with this defense. But back to Kirk Cousins, I just thought that the decision-making was not good enough for, the level of veteran experience. Like I mentioned, could have had another couple turnovers in that mess as well. Though, the one thing that I will say is it is his first game of playing football after missing about 11 months. It definitely looked that way as well. And that excuse can only go on for so long. We've seen Kirk Cousins get off to sluggish starts in the past. I would even go to last year as well, before the Vikings started building up some momentum. Kirk Cousins wasn't great in those first couple games as well, as they lost their first few games of the season. So I'm not entirely out on it, but that being said, one of the biggest things we talked about during this past offseason is Falcons fans are now hoping for Kirk Cousins to be the answer that can lead them to some playoff wins. And I mean, some people put them in Super Bowl contention. I myself was never really that on board with the Falcons, but I thought they could absolutely take a step in the right direction. And that's still very much on the table. But this is a fan base that has now seen their franchise invest into a quarterback that they're not very familiar with, and then also draft another quarterback with the 8th overall pick. So they're not exactly going to have a ton of patience, I feel like, for Kirk Cousins and be overly welcoming if this contract looks like a disaster to start. And I'm not saying it's a disaster after one game. That would be irresponsible. But the clock, I do feel like, is ticking a little bit. And that's unfair to Kirk Cousins 100%. But it's also just kind of the reality of the situation the Falcons put themselves into here with this decision that Michael Penix is probably the more exciting player to be a fan of for a casual fan. And I like Michael Penix too. Do I know if he's going to be a great NFL player? No. But that unknown is almost just as exciting as anything else. And, just thinking about what the upside could be. I'm sure every Falcons fan by this point has watched Penix's fourth quarter heroics in the playoff game that he played against Texas last year. So it's something to take into consideration. And I think it's unfair to Kirk Cousins, and I would give him a few weeks here for whatever it's worth. He had moments that looked all right. And the Falcons offense in general, I thought that they ran the ball overall pretty good. The issue is there's still a lack of explosion with this offense, and that's something that new offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, I'm sure, is going to be looking to add. Bijan Robinson in this game, 18 carries, 68 yards. It was overall productive. It wasn't great, though. And I did think that they got a good push up front. I thought that some of the innovation with it as well, for whatever it's worth, there was the 4th and short situation for the Falcons in the second half where it looked like Kirk Cousins was just going to take it himself up the middle, but they ended up splitting Bijan Robinson out on the right, motioning him across the formation and giving him a jet sweep. Great blocking up front once again to be able to pick that one up. So that was cool. The play innovation of the flood concept in the red zone that ended up sort of just leaving Kyle Pitts stranded wide open by himself for Kirk's touchdown pass. Pretty good play there as well. So I think that this is definitely a work in progress and not something that I'm going to entirely abandon week one, because if I'm not mistaken as well, Zach Robinson, he's obviously coached for a number of years now, but I believe this is his first official offensive coordinator job as well. So there's a lot of new pieces here in Atlanta, and I do think that that is a very talented Steelers defense that they were facing as well, that there is definitely room for growth from here, I should say. But again, just the lack of explosiveness is really something that concerned me. I don't think the Steelers' offense is particularly explosive, generally speaking, and yet we saw Najee Harris rip off a 20-yard run. We saw George Pickens on a few instances have some big pickups. I thought that, by the way, we'll probably get a little bit more into the quarterback conversation in Pittsburgh, but I thought Justin Fields looked pretty good, all things considered. Now, finishing off the drives was a bit more of a concern, but I wouldn't even fully put it on him. Steelers really hurt themselves with penalties in this game, and just the negative plays as well. They had the explosion, but they also had plays that set them back behind the sticks, and Justin Fields is somebody that I think can play really well when you're on script, and can even sort of make up for some deficiencies. You saw the first down conversion of the game for Fields and Pittsburgh was him scrambling up on a 3rd and 7. So I thought the Fields looked pretty good, all things considered, and him and George Pickens seemed to have a connection. Now, that could just be that Pickens is ready to fully emerge. Last year, over 1,000 yards for the first time of his career, led the NFL in yards per reception at 18.1. This game, pretty good overall, 6 catches on 7 targets, 85 yards, and again, had a couple of those explosive plays down the field that definitely made Steelers fans excited. I think 2 of them counted, and then there was another one that was a big-time pickup that ended up getting called back because of a penalty. But I ultimately think that this was just for the Falcons, just sort of to circle back around, they're going to need to find sort of that game-breaking play. They're going to have to find a way to protect Kirk Cousins a little bit more and be able to open up those deep shots as well, because he just never had the time even in this offense. And I'm sure that part of the Steelers' game plan as well was knowing Kirk Cousins hasn't played football in just about 11 months. We're going to bring the heat, and we're going to sort of test out that mobility. Didn't give you much. He did on the touchdown throw to Pitts. He was sort of pulled back outside, rolled out to the left a little bit before making that throw. So I was like, okay, Kirk. But all things considered, he was not going to be able to deal with this level of pressure in his first game back. Didn't play in any of the preseason. This was his full game speed reps really for the first time, and it didn't look good. So not saying that the contract is a disaster just yet. I wouldn't feel great about it if I were a Falcons fan, though. But we'll have to see, because Kirk Cousins, he's never just been a straightforward quarterback. You 100% know what you're getting. You do a little bit, but there are a lot of highs and lows that come with Kirk. So we'll see if the Falcons can ultimately bounce back after this game. They have a game on the road against the Eagles this upcoming week. Not super ideal for them. Have an extra day of rest, I suppose. This is a Monday night game, but tough defense in Philly as well. And really, overall, the schedule isn't super favorable to begin the year for the Falcons, because you have the Chiefs after that, another pretty tough defense in the Saints after that. So again, we'll see sort of how long this takes to see Kirk Cousins get acclimated. And if he doesn't, how quickly do these Michael Penix rumblings, when do they start to come into factor? But let me know what your thoughts in the comments section are. Ultimately, think that Kirk Cousins deserves a lot of blame, but this Falcons team as a whole has a lot of room to grow as well outside of him. But we're going to dive into another surprising result of the weekend, the biggest betting upset, which was the New England Patriots over the Cincinnati Bengals. And this was a game that not a lot of people saw coming. There were some factors headed into it in terms of the availability of wide receivers that did sort of open the door, but ultimately a surprising result, in my opinion, by the end of it. So we are going to break down all of the keys to that game and what is New England actually building something now under Gerard Mayo. We're going to be discussing that game, but first we're going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.